Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The rain fell relentlessly on Boston's cobblestone streets, tracing silver rivers across the asphalt. James Parker, heir to a wealthy family, walked briskly in his black raincoat, his collar turned up against the icy wind. Despite his outward confidence, a deep emptiness had gnawed at him for years. He had it all: fortune, power, respect, but true love seemed to have turned its back on him, as if he were cursed. That's when he saw her. A fragile figure, huddled against the wall of a closed shop, her wet hair plastered to her pale face, her eyes wide open, filled with a silent but profound distress. He stopped dead in his tracks. There was something in that gaze that was strangely familiar, something that made his heart beat faster, as if time itself had stood still. Without thinking, he held out his hand. "Come, I'll take you somewhere warm." She hesitated, but fatigue and fear overcame her mistrust. In the taxi that took them, the silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. James watched her trembling hands, her angelic face, and a confused feeling of affection mixed with nostalgia rose within him. At home, he offered her a job. She could stay, eat, rest, and in exchange, help around the house. She timidly accepted, unaware of the cruel irony of fate. With each passing day, his gestures, his kindness, and that discreet yet radiant smile brought back memories he had long since buried. The bursts of laughter they had shared, the promises whispered under the stars, everything seemed to be reborn in every movement, every word exchanged. But James was still unaware of the most devastating truth: this young woman, whom he had saved almost instinctively, was the one he had loved and lost years before. Their fates had brought them together in a cruel and beautiful way, and soon, the house he had considered his refuge would become the stage for a revelation capable of changing their lives forever. Morning dawned gently over the Parkers' grand house, and the light filtering through the tall windows revealed the cool elegance of each room. James descended the main staircase, a steaming coffee in hand, his gaze already fixed on the young woman bustling about in the kitchen. She was there, silent but methodical, her movements precise and graceful despite the previous day's fatigue. James couldn't help but watch her. There was something familiar about her demeanor, a certain fluidity in her movements, a sparkle in her eyes, but he forced himself not to give in to his memories. After all, she was his maid now, and he couldn't afford to mix business with pleasure. "Good morning, Mr. Parker," she said with a polite smile, placing a tray on the table. Her voice had that soft timbre he recognized without being able to place it. James sat down, trying to hide the imperceptible tremor in his hand. "Good morning, Emily. How are you feeling this morning?" She hesitated for a moment before answering, a slight veil of mistrust in her eyes. I'm fine, thank you. I'm ready for the day." James refrained from frowning. There was something in the way she spoke, in her choice of words, that troubled him. Fragments of memories came back to him, moments shared in a forgotten past, bursts of laughter and promises whispered in the shadow of a distant summer. Throughout the day, he observed her discreetly. She already knew the routines of the house, knew where to find every object, and anticipated his needs before he even expressed them. Part of him wondered how a stranger could be so perfectly at home in his world, and yet, he was convinced that this feeling of familiarity was more than just an illusion. That evening, as she was clearing the table, James decided to break the silence between them. "Emily, can you tell me something about yourself? Your story, before you came here." She froze, her trembling hands resting on the tray. Her eyes, so full of gentleness and restraint, met his, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. She didn't reply immediately, as if she were weighing each word. I'm from Boston, sir. I lost my family a long time ago. Since then, I've lived alone, trying to survive, day after day." James felt a lump form in his throat. There was something in his voice, in that fragmented story, that stirred painful but cherished memories within him. Memories of a girl he had loved, lost, and whom he thought he would never see again. I I think I know you, he murmured almost unconsciously. Emily stepped back slightly, surprised and suspicious. Pardon? But James said nothing more. The words remained stuck in his throat. He understood that fate had just knocked on his door in a way he had never anticipated. And he knew, deep down, that the truth would eventually come out, transforming their relationship, their lives, and perhaps their hearts, forever. The following days passed with a strange routine. Emily adapted to the Parkers' large house with disconcerting ease. Every gesture, every smile, every movement seemed perfectly natural, almost as if she had always belonged there. James, for his part, couldn't help but observe her, sometimes too intently, without daring to show it. That morning, the sun filtered through the heavy curtains of the library. James was there, immersed in files of the family business, when he heard it behind him. "Mr. Parker, I didn't mean to disturb," said Emily timidly. "Come in," he said, looking up. She stepped forward cautiously, an old notebook in her hand. "I found this notebook in the street, where I used to live. It might belong to someone who's looking for it. I thought you might like to see it." Intrigued, James picked up the notebook. His fingers brushed the pages, and when he saw certain drawings, certain words, his heart leaped. These sketches, these sentences, it was exactly the style of someone he knew, someone he had never forgotten. He forced himself to remain calm, but nostalgia and emotion overwhelmed him. "Emily, these drawings, you made them?" he asked softly. She lowered her eyes, confused and nervous. Yes, when I was younger. I didn't think that anyone would remember." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with memories and unspoken words. James felt that strange sense of déjà vu, as if every word, every gesture, every glance brought back years of forgotten feelings. As the day wore on, coincidences became increasingly clear. The expressions she used, certain phrases she uttered unconsciously, everything seemed to draw him back to that past he thought was lost. He found himself thinking back to the summers they had spent together, the innocent promises exchanged under an old oak tree in a Boston park, that feeling of pure happiness he had once known. And then there was that moment. Emily, without realizing it, uttered a sentence that sent a shiver down James's spine. "I sometimes wonder if certain people are destined to return to our lives, regardless of time or distance." James's heart pounded in his chest. That sentence, he'd heard it before, in that exact voice, with that exact tone. His mind raced, reliving every detail, every smile, every tear. And he knew, with a shattering certainty, Emily wasn't just a maid. She was the one he had loved, the one he had lost, and now, fate had reunited them. But he had to remain cautious. The moment of revelation hadn't yet arrived. Too much had changed. Too many wounds were still raw. And yet, a part of him burned with the desire to tell her the truth, now. As evening fell over the city, while Emily put away the dishes in the kitchen, James stood there in silence, watching the play of light on her hair, the delicacy of her movements. Past and present intertwined in his heart, and he understood that their story was not over. On the contrary, it was only just beginning. A few days after the notebook incident, a strange atmosphere had settled over the Parkers' large house. James and Emily were surrounded by silence, punctuated by furtive glances and hesitant gestures. Every interaction seemed laden with unspoken memories and repressed feelings. That morning, James was working in his office when the doorbell rang. An envelope lay on the doormat, addressed to Emily. Curious and apprehensive, he opened it and discovered a series of old letters, yellowed with age, in handwriting he immediately recognized. His heart skipped a beat. These letters, he had received them long ago, when he had lost touch with his first love. And now, here they were, in Emily's hands. He entered the kitchen, the letters trembling in his hands. "Emily, these are your letters, aren't they?" She jumped, her eyes wide. "How?" she murmured, confused and upset. James approached gently. I think I loved you once. Emily. She stepped back slightly, tears welling in her eyes. James, is it you? Are you the one I loved? The silence that followed was heavy with nostalgia and repressed pain. Memories flooded back, clear as if time had never erased them, walks under the trees, shared laughter, promises of a future together, and the brutal separation that had left them alone, heartbroken. Emily was trembling, unable to speak. I couldn't believe I'd see you again, after all these years. James gently took her hands in his, squeezing them as if to convince himself it wasn't a dream. Me neither. I've never stopped thinking about you. Never. And yet, here we are, by chance, or perhaps by fate. They stood there, face to face, tears gently rolling down their cheeks, the weight of lost years mingling with the intensity of the moment. The house, once cold and silent, seemed to vibrate with a new warmth. For the first time in a long time, James felt a true connection rekindled, a mixture of tenderness and desire. He knew the road to healing the past, to rebuilding what had been broken, would be long, but he also knew that this second chance was the most precious of all. Emily finally looked up at him. So, what are we going to do now? James gave a small, gentle, and determined smile. We're going to get to know each other again, and this time, I'll never let you go. Their hands clasped a little tighter, and for the first time in years, they felt whole. The past had caught up with the present, and the future looked promising, even if fraught with challenges. For fate, capricious but fair, had just offered them a second chance, and this time, they were ready to do anything to seize it. The weeks following the revelation were a mixture of happiness, nostalgia, and tension. James and Emily shared every moment carefully, learning to rediscover each other while trying to heal past wounds. Yet, life still had challenges in store for them. One evening, as rain fell once more on the city, an unexpected visit disturbed their fragile equilibrium. An elegant woman, her face etched with worry, appeared at the door. James Parker? I'm Karen, a friend of your family. I need to talk to you about Emily. James felt his heart sink. What could she possibly know? Emily, surprised and suspicious, remained aloof. Karen pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the table. Emily, you've never talked about your past, but there are things you need to know about your family. Emily picked up the file, her hands trembling. Her eyes scanned the pages, discovering secrets she had always been unaware of, letters, legal documents, photographs. Her past, which she thought was lost, was in reality filled with mysteries and people who had relentlessly searched for her. James moved closer to her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. No matter what you find out, I'm here. We'll face this together. The revelations were devastating, but they strengthened their bond. Each secret revealed brought their hearts closer, solidifying the love they had thought lost forever. And amidst these storms, one certainty emerged: no obstacle could tear them apart. A few days later, in the garden bathed in the soft glow of twilight, James took Emily's hands in his. Emily, he said, these years have separated us, but they've also taught us what truly matters. I never want to lose you again. Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. Me neither. I never stopped loving you, James. They drew closer, and in a tender and passionate kiss, all the pain of the past seemed to vanish. The wind carried away the rain, and the twilight light enveloped their rediscovered love in a soothing warmth. Fate had tested them, led them through loneliness and loss, but it had also given them a second chance. And this time, nothing could tear them apart. For Emily and James had rediscovered not only their lost love, but also the certainty that their story, marked by chance and miracles, had only just begun.